Experts Podcast.
Let's go.
Clap it.
Hello everyone. Thank you for this new episode in our podcast, Invisible Experts. Today, we have this little series of our sustainable show. It's called the SDGs at a Crossroads, celebrating achievements and debating the future. Today, we are diving deep into the sustainable development goals as we approach 2030, which is, of course, a critical moment to reflect on what's been achieved and what challenges remain. Today, I'm joined by two esteemed guests, Sandra Ramos, an academic who has researched, about SDGs, the impact of sustainable organizations, social enterprises, and Jey Bala, a practitioner who is directly involved in implementing sustainable initiatives through Mereka and through Biji-Biji, right? Funny enough, community, I didn't really plan this, but Sandra is a Portuguese herself, and Jey is from Malacca, who was colonized by the Portuguese in the 1500s, which is funny. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened. So hello,
Yes.
guys. How you doing today?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes.
How are you guys? It's the first time that you met, right?
Yes, the first time.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I was thinking when I was preparing this episode that you guys gonna be an excellent duo. So, for our community, it's gonna be a super chilled conversation. We're gonna try to see different perspective about the SDGs, how they work, and so on, which is very important. So let's start. Okay. So for our community, for those who perhaps do not have clear or who have no idea what the SDGs are, what is the Agenda 2030, in simple terms, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a kind of a global plan that was adopted by all UN member states around 2015. And it aimed at eradicating poverty, protecting the planet, and ensuring peace and prosperity for all, right? So this agenda was driven by 17 sustainable development goals, the famous SDGs, which try to cover a wide range of issues, including health, education, gender, equality, climate action, and economic growth. There are some key results so far, according to the UN and the World Bank database. So first, according to them, extreme poverty has decreased globally, but progress has slowed, with around 8.4% of the world's population still living on less than 1.90 US dollars a day, right? In terms of climate action remains a significant challenge. For instance, the CO2, the global carbon dioxide emissions increased by 0.9% in 2022, highlighting that more needs to be done to meet targets for reducing emissions. In terms of education, which is another very important dimension for this, has improved with the number of out-of-school children declining, but nearly 244 million children are still not receiving formal education. And another big topic is gender equality. That shows progress, but gaps persist, particularly in labor market participation and political representation. So overall, according to the data, while there have been important strides, the world is off track in meeting many of the SDGs by 2030, particularly in the face of recent global crises like the COVID-19 pandemic and climate-related disasters. Having said that, Africa, or the entire continent of Africa, has already said that they cannot meet those objectives, so they have their own agenda, which we're going to cover in another episode. But let's discuss then about the SDGs and its progress, right? So, Sandra, from an academic perspective, what are the most significant achievements of the SDGs so far?
Well, I think that you said some statistics, and statistics normally, well, they don't lie, as they say. They can be manipulated, however, but normally they don't lie. So I think that, well, before saying what I think, what was the main achievements, I want to say that I have a very European perspective and I have a very French perspective. Even if I'm Portuguese, I'm living in France since 2014, even if I have been then some experience in other countries too, a couple of years ago, but still a very European Western perspective of these achievements. So it not be maybe the same as others, like maybe Jey then will have a different opinion, which then would be interesting to discuss, I think. But what I can see is that one thing that I see, just depending on the goals, I think that in France, some goals have been not achieved because we cannot say fully achieved yet. I think that we are very far from that. As you said, off track. Africa said that they will not achieve. I don't think Europe will achieve either. However, they can be a little bit more optimistic, but there's still a lot of work to do. I think that, for example, in terms of climate change, there is a lot of awareness that was created. What I can see mainly with my students, because they are the younger generations, so the Gen Z, they are aware of these issues. They changed some of their habits. They want, for example, as I'm in a management and I teach in the Faculty of Economics and Management, so I teach to students that they will future managers and economists and so on. They are already changing their behaviors and they want companies to change their behaviors as well, to put practices in place that goes towards the fulfillment of these goals. So I think there is some, at an individual level, some people is changing behaviors, which I think it's important because I think that CDGs will only change if us at the individual level, we also change. Okay, so that's my first opinion, because I can see that from the students are active in certain actions. For example, here they assigned an agreement with other universities in which they put certain actions in place that goes towards fulfillment of CDGs. It can be mainly the climate change. So this, they call it this social ecological transition. It's a very specific term that they use. But then I feel also that companies, as you said, I have been researching and I'm in a project currently that is looking at the economic, social and governance aspects of companies and their transformation. So how they transform their business models. But these are mainly small, medium companies here in France. They, even if they want to put in places actions towards these CDGs, they don't have the resources, so they are still small in size, and the smallness brings some challenges to them. They have the wish, the desire to, they put some actions into place, but I can say like actions like better management of their waste, how to, for example, manage better their electricity, okay, how they can, in a small scale, reduce their CO2 emissions, how they can, for example, put into place some practices for gender equality and say, okay, let's try to recruit more women. But then it's also linked to the market, because if the market there is not the skills they need, women with the skills they need, they cannot recruit. Or other aspects as handicap or decreasing poverty, then companies work less with these issues, so they work more with climate change or gender equality. But for example, poverty, they are not focused on that at all. I think that part is more about the social enterprises or the social economy organizations that are in town. And it was quite interesting that you said that globally poverty decreased, but what we see in France, here in the north mainly, we see more and more homeless on the street, more and more people begging. So there's signs, visible signs of poverty and an increase that is visible to everyone. And we don't even need statistics. In that case, we can say that what we see doesn't lie, right? We are really seeing it. So in terms of poverty, there's a long way to go. But as you mentioned, also there's the economic situation after COVID, and then with the inflation and the housing crisis as well, because we also suffer from it. I don't know if then in Malaysia will be the same or not, but here in Europe we have the houses prices skyrocket and a lot of people cannot afford a house anymore. We are not even speaking about the conditions then of the houses, but housing, it's not affordable for many, and so it left a lot of people on the streets. So there's a lot of actions to be done. I think that companies don't address these issues. Social economy organizations do with projects, which sometimes they also suffer from financial difficulties as well. What I can see also in terms of for-profit, my opinion in terms of the for-profit campaigns still is that here in Lille we have very known global organizations such as Decathlon and Auchan, those big companies. And I remember sitting with them for a round table with some students too, and students are asking these companies, why don't you do more? And they say, as a business, we need to go through a transformation process that it's very long, and the deadline we have is short. So they try to do, they say, we try to work with better suppliers. We try to see if their working conditions in their countries it's to our standards and to our regulations, but it's not possible to do everything. So they say, we can do it, we are doing it, but they are small steps. And sometimes, my opinion, I think that the CDGs, it's very huge goals to achieve. And the deadline we set was not realistic, considering the efforts that we put into. When I say we say everyone at individual level, because even us, individual level, is very difficult to change the behavior. If I want to buy more organic food and to consider where this food comes from in order to reduce also my CO2 emission and so on, or I want to take a bicycle to the university instead of the car and so on, I need also to, this also impacts the whole world. So I need to change also at individual level, and sometimes we take months and months, or not even months, sometimes even years to do it. So companies that they have all these structures in place, they have already these strategies in place, they have all the systems and processes, they cannot change in 10 years. It will take more time. And then, but I think they do it. I think it's not what we wanted yet.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe I will not go, I don't know if maybe I'm speaking more about the challenges than the progress, but I think companies are doing a little bit. Maybe they cannot do more. On the other side, they could, but they don't do it because several challenges, and sometimes the will as well, the desire to do it.
No. Thank you. It's very interesting. Actually, I want to get back to you in a sec, but let's open the floor for our friend Jey. So Jey, how have the SDGs translated into the real world impact? Can you share examples from your experience with Mereka and Biji-Biji where SDG implementation has led to tangible results?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm hearing a lot. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the same problem. We are all in this global situation, like it's all about thinking global than local at times. Everything kind of affects each other. If there's a war somewhere, if there's a drought somewhere, it does affect a lot of people. I remember at one point, even at McDonald's, we couldn't get potato chips. They said like it's out of stock because of wars everywhere. So, small things does make a big difference. Of course, what I have seen, like a lot more people are interested, definitely, in terms of passion. Like what we can see, the younger generation, a lot, even in the older generation, even working like 5-10 years, they're like, but is this what I want to do? Is this my legacy? People are trying to think big, what they are leaving behind for their kids or for the future, so I want to hope, and I'm being optimistic always, even knowing that 2030 is the set time, or, the ticking time bomb and stuff. Of course, we want maybe there's extension needed and stuff, but I guess it's a good marker to see okay, fine, science said we can't do anything. Okay, then what is the damage and what damage control we need to do after that, So it's good to have that there. Then we can also kind of like copy it down. But I feel the reporting side is where it's kind of lacking a lot. A lot of us maybe do it our own way, or don't have like a simple standards, because I've read a few different styles of reporting in this way. A lot of people just take the SDG, put it up on their company and say like, SDGs, but what are you doing there? Like you need to look into the targets. How are you representing this data? So I feel that part of it, they always struggle a little bit to understand the value of it in terms of reporting in a global standard framework. We do try to do our best in our way. So whenever we do projects, so our main area is to actually help other people to realize this. So we run a bunch of accelerator programs. We are a makerspace even, so people can come and use all the things that we have. It's an open source concept, so anybody can just copy paste, and the more the better. It's not about it's all about collaboration. So I see a lot of these things happening because I guess corporates are more monopoly, more in that kind of mindset. It's business first. Whereas in social enterprise, yes, it is wearing your heart on your sleeve at times and like doing all the work, but also you need to make money. You need to be sustainable. You want to be profitable. You want to grow your team. You want to retain the best people, So, building your credibility takes time, effort, and also, having good vision, direction. So I like to see how NGOs are changing also in their way, what they need to do. So that's also quite nice to see. I was talking to some friends in Australia, in different continents. So I'm seeing like different areas they're looking at it also in a larger sense of things. But I guess there are also some areas of, changes need to happen. People need to like restructure or think big even in that sense. So for seeing that, I definitely appreciate, yes, we are, I think all three of us are in the education space. So education is the best way to change things, because as much as you put a sticker and say, please recycle or switch off the lights, nobody cares. But with education, if somebody understands, when they have that mindset, it's like, I will always want to make sure, or like, we keep each other in check, but in the right way, So that sort of culture, behavioral norms does need to take shift in a larger scale. I think there's definitely ways for us to like rethink how we educate, even from the young or even those in different age groups and stuff. And also just talking about a bit about like the government and also the corporates. Yes, I think they want to try and do it. They just do it maybe for the photograph or just that write-up, or they have this big company and then they have one person in sustainability department, and then you're like, guys, sometimes I guess the shift is to have the implementers to not only pitch to this one person, but also to pitch to the bigger, larger group, because sometimes when we preach to this one person is like gatekeeper, and they might not be heard even well in their own space. So sometimes I feel like, having friends in this space, so they should, work in that collaboration way. We are also trying to find ways to better position ourselves in terms of like the work that we do. How can we translate it or share it into a bigger arena? How can we maybe just share it into a roundtable with the policy change makers? How can they use this in a larger scale? So at least it doesn't just be like, okay, I did this impact, yay, took this photograph, this is my stories and content, and that's it. We gotta push like bigger things, like sharing these resources. So having these cool projects, these cool ideas, I think every time I show people a tour of the space and I talk just about a few of the projects, everybody's like, wow. And I'm like, wow, we did this like 7 years ago and people are still, still learning this. So, that entry level for most people to understand also what is this about, how to use it to their benefit. Definitely, if we can, align with them better and show them how this can actually help them gear up to actually do better business, make better decisions. Just like what Sandra was saying, like sometimes we say like, yeah, we want to teach people with disability or anybody like that. Sometimes we want to, but we don't do the work enough. Like there needs to be some sort of approaches that we need to have already established. so that if you want to do it, it's not just I want to do it, but yes, I've approached all these people, I've done the work, not just there's this poster, everybody should come, yay. So we want to think in that sort of like quality, in that sense of what we do, the work that we do, because I feel like the level of people that we have been able to support, and even some of the small projects we have worked on, it really is inspiring. Even like just to hear people doing from things from fashion to education to innovation. There's so many different things that's coming up. I feel it's just a matter of like branding it also nicely, and now we have the power to market ourselves. So we just need to be much more smarter in how we use these kind of like digital tools. It's getting faster and faster that we can make much more better decisions, and things can work faster for us even. So that pace is going to move even faster as the years go by. Sure.
Cool. Okay, that's very interesting because, for those in our community, Mereka and Biji-Biji, they are two different sustainable organizations or companies. So Biji-Biji work with more upcycling, right? And Mereka works more from the educational part within the sustainable framework, right? I'll get back to you, Jey, but I want to ask Sandra, okay? Sandra, we as an academics, right? We have to read, especially in our sector, a lot of literature about, sustainability, sustainable enterprises, sustainable organizations, or as you put it before, how for-profit kind of embedded these new practices, right? My impression, this is my perspective though, it tends to be a little bit over positive. So what do you think? Do you think it's too over positive, or we need more critical analysis from the academic point of view?
Well, I think we do. I think that we need to be more critical about certain practices, and that's we have a lot of greenwashing, social washing, and so I think that we academics also play the game. Like we try to tell a lot of beautiful stories, successful stories all the time. And so we should be more critical about these practices, both the practices, of sustainable business that were built in this way, that their core is that, but also other for-profit organizations that they decide to become more sustainable, but they decided for the marketing purposes, for the picture as well. Jey spoke about the governments that they pose for the picture, but organizations also do that. Of course, for me, it's different to ask a small, medium company to do some changes than to ask like a corporation. Even if I think that corporations have more resources, and as you said, Jey, a big corporation that have one small department of sustainability, like let's laugh, right? So they could do much more. They have the resources to do it. So here for me, it's the lack of will to do it. Instead of small, medium companies, they have scarce resources, but sometimes they have one person or a department also for sustainability. So like let's see these two type of organizations, right? But I think that in academics, they should be more critical about this. I have been reading lately about, as I said, the business models transformation, so business models for sustainability, and we say that most organizations, they are sustainable. We label them as such, but there is still a long way to do. To do and to go. A lot of things to do and a long way to go to achieve then certain goals, mainly the SDGs ones. So yes, be more critical in what we write about these companies. And I mean companies, I mean all the organizations, not only the for-profit, but non-profit too. Or
this
the
is
hybrid.
very interesting. Yeah, but this is very interesting what you just mentioned, because if I'm not mistaken, Sandra, one of your key areas or that you are an expertise, areas of expertise is social impact evaluation, right?
Well, I was involved in one project I'm still involved in one project with some colleagues about social impact evaluation, but it's a topic very recent of my research.
So do you think, based upon what you've read or what you've seen as a researcher, that some for-profit companies, perhaps they feel such policy pressure onto them to comply with the SDG agenda, and then they do it for the sake of it? Or do you reckon they do it because, they really believe that's the way to go for a better future? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. I something that I discuss very often with my students even. I think that it depends on the companies, of course. I'm not saying this is general. I don't want to generalize, but I know that some companies that they just want to comply with regulations. They do it because they have to, because governments put in place certain regulations, frameworks that they have to comply. So they do it because of it, without thinking of, or for me, it's without changing their values. But when I mean changing their values, it's changing their practices. Mainly is not only showing on their website, oh, okay, now we have sustainability as a keyword, as our main value is sustainability. Okay, and just to put in the report, they are obliged. A lot of companies here in France, depending on the size, of course, they have to comply with this, and they do it because they have to. I think there are others, they do it out of passion. They do it because they believe in so. We have a very good case of Danone, and we had a CEO a couple of years ago that he was very invested in social businesses, for example, and he tried to settle different social businesses with the support of Danone, but it didn't work for the Danone investors, and they changed CEO after some years. They wanted results very quickly, when the results for this type of field, sustainability is not measured immediately. It takes time. It takes time to do changes. It takes time for changes to stay stick, to ground. So it's something about measuring the impact and measuring the results. I think that we are still very in the short term, and things need to be in the long term. Even if we are pressured, I understand this duality, because it's a kind of a duality. I mean, we have the pressure to do fast, but at the same time, these are things that take time. So it's the same as I said before, the Danone company is the same. They were pressured to have results that they were that they will please the investors. But social business, as you know, it takes a lot of time to have a positive return, and it's just not about the financial part. It's about the impact that have in people's life, and we cannot measure this easily. And this, when we work locally and you work with the people, as Jey do, and I'm quite sure maybe you agree with me, you see the impact you have on people. You see how they can change their lives. They're small steps, right? I remember when I worked in the field in Portugal, and we cannot say, okay, for us it's really very small objectives, and we were reaching this. But if you saw the big picture, then I say, okay, you are not doing anything. But we were doing. There's an impact on the ground, and it's impact on the daily life of these people that we work with. And so I think that they do it, some companies, just summarize some companies, I think they do it for, because they have to comply with the regulations. They do it to put it in the reports they have to submit annually. Others, they do it because they believe in so. It's part of their core values, and they do it, and these values became their practices.
Sure. That's fantastic. Thank you. Jey, from your practitioner perspective, right? Do you think you guys, as a sustainable enterprise, you would benefit more as the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs being pushed from the top-down policies? Do you reckon you guys actually evolved as a consequence of such a change of policies in terms of education, environment, and so on and so forth?
I guess, in Asia, it's a bit more trickier in a sense. Like, a lot of people still are trying to understand it. They understood the SDG, then suddenly now there's ESG. So,
Okay.
So companies like in Malaysia, like if you're a public listed company, you need to report your ESG. So it's a compulsory thing. So they just started this about a few years ago. So everybody is like scrambling, like, how do we report on this? Like, so the government has got websites that people need to, put in their data, and then they try to do like, I guess, level 1. Some people, if they really got enough data, and some maybe level 2 kind of reporting in that way. So as they found out the SDGs, now there's ESG. So it's like, well, okay. So they are also figuring it out how to do these two things. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but also an opportunity. I always say, there is something different. Now we can also run trainings to teach them what's the difference between these two. So sometimes I even do that with some of the event companies, because they run a lot of events. They don't know how to think green, like how to think sustainably, like even small things like your lanyards or how are your guests traveling. All these things can be already quantified. And like my friend, one of our participants, now he's a doctor, and he's even opened up his own carbon GPT AI platform where you can do calculations for these kind of things. So, people can use it, but again, nobody knows about this. It's hard for them. They'll be like, so what do I report on? And then people get scared whether they're reporting it correctly or not. And then they just end up doing anything, So for us, we try to make it as easy as possible. So don't need to make a big report, we say. Just try to do something simple. Let it be just one page Canva, or like a poster that you share. Like every time you finish a project, you could actually just make a poster, say, hey, we impacted this many people, this is what we did. Okay, then keep doing it. As you practice, as you make it a norm in your organization, it becomes culture. So I think that culture kind of sense of, we are all one tribe or one world, people of the world, thinking in this kind of like bigger scale of things, it helps a bit. So till today, I still have that, we have to teach people and tell people about why are we doing, sustainability, what's it about. People don't know the difference in what is an NGO and a social enterprise. They'd be like, oh, but you're doing waste stuff, so it should be free. And then we're like, no, there's manpower, time, and then, try to tell them what is the reasoning and what's the style, why we need profit even, so the education side of things happens. That's why we advocate a lot to tell people about, what are the simple steps, easy things. If you want to recycle, make sure it's clean and dry, and then go to the recycling places, find these places, and just having them realize like they can make a difference. Because a lot of times people are like, I actually don't think I can make a difference. And it starts with a lot of things. It starts from every single dollar you have, or euro or ringgit or whatever you have, what you buy, what you believe in, what you watch, what you take in, consume and stuff. All this really matters, So I think putting it up in front of them, that's why this SDG makes it like, oh, okay, that's this thing. Now, how do I use it? So the using it part is where, these kind of like programs they can come and learn, or because of this kind of top down, like you have to do this report. Now everybody's like, okay, we have to do it. It's good. It's important. Because sometimes if you tell people, put your seatbelt in the back seat, nobody listens. When they say they're going to fine people, then they do it for 6 months or 3 months. Then after that, they stop, It's that thing that if it doesn't catch on, it doesn't happen, So these kind of things need to have like very simple but very cool innovations. I love this thing, innovation, like using design thinking. Let's solve things like small scale, like even piloting these kind of stuff is so cool to just see the data that you get, like this has happened, this is the results. And I'm always fascinated by this, sometimes just even not spending so much of money. It's just about, just using time and evaluating it properly, and just looking to the processes of what's happening. You can find so many cool things, and you again don't need to reinvent the wheel. Go online, search it, ask ChatGPT or whichever AI tool, and figure out new cool ways. This is that time to like, grab this kind of opportunity to like realize what you want to do. You can learn from just going and, some people I've had like people who did law for like 5 years and they're like, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. Just come and intern with us and like figure out their life, and like, I need to find something, So I feel we need more of these kind of interventions to shock the system, maybe even. That could be fun to do. But also like, that's why I feel like working with the government is important. That's why you can do big scale stuff. So, doing that kind of level of sharing and stuff is so important. I was recently in Pakistan where I was giving a talk about marketing with them, and they were saying like how in Parliament normally they'll ask people to just come. It's going to be virtual, and everybody just shares their problem. But instead, they flipped it. They said like, no, we're going to use design thinking. So they hired a third-party innovator in digital transformation. So they brought in and they said like, no, we'll get them to break out, talk about it, pick the best 3 challenges they want to choose, and then they discuss it. Then they were like, wow, when we have this kind of sessions, it's so amazing because nobody's blaming and fighting. They're like, hey, we decided this is 3 challenges. Let's solve this. So it flips it, because a lot of times I think we talk about problem. We scare people so much. And then like, I mean, okay, fine. We cry, take a day, huddle, let's, okay, finish, done. Then okay, what solution? Let's grind our teeth and like get into solutions and do that, more than cry. Cry one day, no problem. We'll cry. I'll cry with you together.
Okay, that's... Listen, dude, I think, guys, I'm maybe Sandra doesn't know, but I'm a big admirer of you guys work, right? Mereka, Biji-Biji, we even partnered a little bit. We created something cool though. I'm always wondering whether or not you actually like evaluate and report your impact, not only in terms of Biji-Biji transforming what is being wasted and then you reuse it and you turn it into a product, but also, in terms of your educational, especially programs with the youth. Have you ever like published a report? This is our impact, is measured by this, is you can pick from Mereka's and Biji-Biji's experience, what are the top 3 impact in terms of social and environmental?
Okay, so the big one is, of course, with our partners. So maybe a few things I'm going to touch. One is maybe what Sandra also said. It's about long-term programs. Sometimes you do one-off, you apply another grant, then you apply another grant. Just keep on applying. It's a waste of time of anybody to write the grant even in the first place. So it's better to do a 3-year program, 5-year program. Let's go. Every year, let's do something in build up to it. So that helps to actually like give us better impact, more room to actually explore. Because then next year again, you're like, do I keep the same team? Do I, I can't keep this because it's manpower time and that project is over. So it's a 5-year project. They also feel secure, and this is the type of things we want to see, more long-term partnerships in that way. In terms of projects, yes. So we work with the US Embassy a bit for some of the programs. A lot of it is again grant application. But we have done quite a few things. We've done a few summits, a few boot camps for them. And this is where we actually started off in a sense because it was pandemic. And then we were doing our trainings online from physical. And then we do come up with these reports, like how much each team, where we actually, when we do a project, it has a different deliverables, different target and all these things. But the best things that we see that we can do best is in the training and mentorship and funding. So because if it's just like come learn and then I say bye to you, it's okay, it's nice, great. But if I say like, hey, at the end of it, let's take your business or something you want to start. So some of them are business owners, some of them are NGOs, some of them social enterprises, some of them just college students just want to champion something, right? So this is where I feel the higher value where we play a lot in is in that accelerator program. So this is where we provide the funding and mentoring. So right now, even I'm doing one site, another thing with UNESCO UpCU, and most of the participants are from the African continent, but we have some from even Asia, like Indonesia. And this is the 5th year we're doing it with them. And it's amazing. We're just giving them, I think with our partner UNESCO, we're just giving them $1,000, only $1,000. And they every time will say like, Jey, I'm going to go to 10 schools and talk to this. I'm like, $1,000, you can't do that. You need to pilot it, smaller thing. I know you want to, but they are so hungry. They really can, like, we're going to do it. And then when I talk to like in Asia and stuff, they're a bit more like, they're like, oh no, that's a small budget. Yeah, we'll do this scope. But even in that level of things, we can see the impact, And because even this is something I'll share with everybody here. So if you can, join a program, get a mentor if you can, or get a coach. Slightly different things. Coach will just guide you and ask you questions to yourselves. So they'll just coach you in that way. Mentors are subject matter expert a little bit. So they will know, like, okay, if you're doing work in environmental or animal protection, they will actually tell you what are the things you need to do. So this is like ways you can learn so much more faster if you're looking at things. So this is where we feel they also see that value, like, because we're passionate and we really, really like try to be there. So I mentor a few of these businesses personally, just because I also am excited to hear what they're doing. There's one participant right now I have in UNESCO. He's from Afghanistan, and he's trying to do work to educate women. And I'm like, bro, you can't. It's the government there wouldn't allow it. So he's like, yeah, I'm working for the Ministry of Finance in the Taliban right now, but how can I do this? I was so like, like, how do I send you money? He said, you can't. You send me money, 70% of the money goes to the Taliban. So we cannot take the money. So what can we do? So I have to think on my feet. I was like, okay, why not we buy them ChatGPT and Canva free as access? So maybe then they can use this for their business maybe. He said, okay, that's better. Rather than giving the money out, let's buy them things that they can use for their businesses. Every situation, every business has got their own challenges and stuff. But just to answer your question in that way, it's like, yeah, the mentoring and the training part of that journey is kind of where I see like the best results, and then there are different scales. Like right now we're doing one with IKEA. So that is looking at business owners who are there, who've been doing this for 2 to 3 years. So some we do for very entrepreneur or entry level. Then there's some for like advanced levels. Then we do this kind of like mentoring or coaching and helping them to scale to that level. So this is where we see the value. Every project we finish, we end it with an impact poster that we share online. We have it on our website and all this, because we want to show people like, hey, this is how we did it. Maybe it could be something you can use also. So each individual participant, they end with their project with an impact poster that we make that has all the things that they have done particularly. And then this can help them then later to apply for bigger grants, hopefully. Because a lot of them, when you ask them, have you pitched before? They're like, no, this is my first time. How do I pitch? So we teach them what to pitch, because sometimes they're like, no, I want to do all these things. So we kind of like tune it down, make sure that they can achieve what they want to do and make sure there's the impact and all this. So the guidance, I feel this is where as big brother, big sister, or even young brother, young sister and brothers, we should come together and helping each other. So spending that time building your network and doing all these things can really like catapult this, and that's where we see biggest impact.
Cool. Thanks, man. So I have for you two very quick yes or no questions, right?
Ooh.
So do you both believe the progress is in line with the 2030 target?
No.
No.
Okay. Second question. Are the global statistics reflective of the real situation on the ground?
No.
Okay. So to conclude, there is a lot to do in order to meet such agenda, right? This is for this segment.
Yeah.
Okay, the next time, guys, I want to talk about is the challenges and the criticism of the SDGs. Okay, so let's think about the challenges of implementing the SDGs on the ground. So the SDGs are a global roadmap for addressing critical issues, no? As said before, like poverty, inequality, and climate change by 2030. However, their implementation faces several key challenges. Okay, overall, this is what the reports and data and literature suggest. First, in terms of funding gaps. Okay, according to like few studies, there is a shortfall of 2.5 to 3.7 trillion US dollars annually especially in developing countries. Okay, hence, without sufficient resources, large-scale progress remains slow. Second, in terms of global inequality, actually, Sandra mentioned in the introduction, there are different templates. Not everything happens at the same time and at the same level, in every country. So progress is uneven, right? Wealthier nations are advancing, not there yet, but in comparison to other societies, but poorer countries struggle due to the lack of infrastructure and political instability, right? Then political instability, conflicts in regions like perhaps now the Middle East and perhaps parts of Africa severely disrupt progress on basic goals like poverty and education, right? Another big topic is weak accountability that we touched upon a little bit before. There are some countries that are not required to report progress consistently. So that makes it hard to track real advancement. So without accountability, some governments present overly optimistic results. That's according to the studies. Another big topic is overly broad goals. Hence, the SDGs with 17 goals and approximately 169 targets are often seen as too broad and too ambitious. So this lack of focus makes it difficult to turn global goals into actionable national plans. We talked about it a little bit before, right? Another topic is economic versus environmental trade-off. And this is a big thing. Many countries, especially those relying on fossil fuels, finding it hard to prioritize environmental goals without harming their economies, right? And then the last one is the global crisis. COVID and climate disasters has, of course, or have reversed gains, pushing more people back into poverty and widening inequalities, right? So overall, critics argue that the SDGs push a Western development model that may not work for all contexts, especially with the natives or local communities. This is according to Escobar, which is a Colombian researcher in terms of development, and also other studies. Also, they say that they may address symptoms rather than systemic issues like inequality. So with this in context, right, Sandra, critics argue that SDGs are too broad, right? And some goals contradict to each other. For instance, balancing economic growth with the environmental sustainability, which is a major challenge. So from what you know about research or pieces of research that you've read, what do you think are the key obstacles preventing more significant progress?
Well, that's a very good question. Because I was reading this morning about the obstacles and so on to have a more clear idea of what I previously had. Maybe mainly to not fall into it's just my opinion. I think that my opinion is the one that prevails. So I was trying to read. And, you mentioned this at the end, also economic growth and the other goals. And you said this incompatibility that I think the big growth theories, they speak so much about it. Why we always speak about growth when we know that we cannot grow anymore, only if we grow the planet as well, but we can't. And still, for the climate, for the environmental aspects, we may work if we have more resources, but humans are greedy, so we will use all the resources we have again. But in terms of then other issues, as you said, there's the poverty and so on, they may still persist even if we grow our planet bigger than what it is already. So for me, the growth theories, I'm very critical about, even if I'm not an economist and I don't have a lot of knowledge about this, but I think that we should not only focus in economic growth, but also see what we can learn from the degrowth theories and see if we can put it into place, even if it's difficult. And we still speak about it, but I'm not saying that it's a failure, but I think people don't want to hear about degrowth. We only hear about growth, economic growth, and so on, which, as you said, is not compatible with other goals. And so to grow, we need maybe to, as you said, that we, in 2022, there is 0.29 CO2 emissions, so it's above what we were expecting. So maybe it's linked to the growth that we want. And we see that still, again, very European perspective, it's the main discourse, main speech in the media from the politicians, from the corporations, that is about growth. And so I think that I even wrote in my notes that it's that, and also another thing is money and capitalism, because a lot of stakeholders think only about this. And I think it's even, sometimes I start to think in a more philosophical way if this is something very human. Because, at a small level, we also think about it because we do need it. I teach social enterprises and I say to my students, you also need to think of the financial side because you do need that. It's in the world we live. We need the money to survive. We need the world to do things and the money to do things. But I think that is too focused on that. And if something doesn't bring us this return on the investment we did or the return we want, it's not good. So I think that the speech also should change, and starting by the top, not only the people that we are aware of this, and in the practice we already focus on other goals than just the financial ones. So I think that the government should also focus on that and say, okay, it's just not about growth. It's just not about the capitalism or the money that we make. So I think that it's money above all, and I think that they should change their mindset. I think that's the main change that we should implement, but it's about humans, and we take a lot of time to change and to accept it as the future, or as it is better. Because for me, even simple things I discuss with my students, okay, nowadays we don't want the cars the car that with the gas, I forgot now the name of it, thermal cars. They want to pass to electrical ones. And I ask my students, because they say to me, oh, this is sustainability. We need to change. The car I'm using, I need to buy an electric one. I say, okay. But what do you think, that you don't need other raw materials to produce your electrical car? Don't you think that is like lithium in the batteries, that they are destroying in some forests or some places, ecological places, and they will destroy it to extract the lithium? So don't you think that I overproducing this? What we will do with the batteries in the future? So for me, it's all about, it's a new way, I think, of thinking, a new way of doing things. Like I tell them, so maybe for you, it's better to try to be closer to work if you can, of course, or walk to work, or use a bicycle and try to use this bicycle for until you die, not change bicycles, because if you are producing bicycles, you also need resources to produce these bicycles. So it's another, for me, it's a shift in behaviors, first in mindset and then in behaviors. And that takes, I think, a lot of time.
Okay, thank you. And I really liked what you said before, like perhaps this mindset of money above all, right? Which connects with the degrowth challenges of the idea that more is always better, and suggests that sustainable future perhaps involve doing with less for the sake of everyone, for the sake of people and the planet.
Yeah, because we see that, sorry to interrupt, but because we see
please go ahead.
I think, I don't know exactly when it ended, but I think we already consumed the resources of the earth for this year, right? So every year it's one day before or 2 days before of the previous one. So the resources that we have are not illimited, are limited. So for us to grow, we need to have unlimited resources. And we don't have. So as I say, it's a way of consuming even, as me as an individual. In this case, I'm not looking at just academic perspective, but it also what I discuss with my students is our way of doing things, of living our life that must change in order to achieve these CDGs. We are part of it. We cannot just blame corporations. We cannot just blame governments. They still have a lot to do. And I would hear that politicians should not downgrade the issues. And as you said, maybe these are symptoms, and they don't look at the systemic issues. They don't look at it as an holistic one. They look at it as their country only. They don't look internationally. They don't look, as you say, okay, here maybe in France, we will say, okay, we are on the path to achieve, to decrease our CO2 emissions, but maybe most of the companies produce in Bangladesh. Who will consume this that is produced in Bangladesh? Us here in France. So we also have an effect on that countries. So maybe their part of their CO2 should be inputted to France.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's a global world, and we are all interconnected in this globalization, right? So they look just at themselves. Okay, now we are doing well. Now I'm happy, and the rest of it. So I think it's important to governments to change this perspective. It's important that they don't let themselves influenced by the lobbyists, by corporations. And then they say, okay, we are doing good. We are doing well. Let's extract all the water we have here, but we are doing well. You don't have water to drink, then not a problem. We give you other drinks, soft drinks, right? So I think the governments, they allow these corporations to also, move as they want. They shouldn't be that influenced by lobbyists, and they are. And the big corporations, they think about their own pockets. They think about their own, business above all, money above all, I think. And then I think that social enterprises, in the case in social economy organizations in the broader sense, they are doing as they can. I think with, as Jey said, with very few funds, with very short-term funds, I don't think the funders understand that things take time to put into place, that impacts doesn't measure in 1 week or 1 year or 2 years. They need more. When we speak about strategy in the companies, we think a long term, I think more than 5 years. So how can we measure, okay, we want to decrease. I remember when I was working in Portugal, we were partnering with a kind of a big company there in the north of Portugal, and their goals for us were very realistic. Their perspective as a company was not compatible with our perspective that we were on the field and working with the homeless, and we were saying, no, we cannot do that. We cannot change a person's life, and we cannot expect someone to change their life, something that they lived for 30, 40 years. They cannot say, okay, now you will change. Here, take it. Change it. No, it's not like that. And they were saying, no, you have to show us what you do, what you are doing in 1 week, or not 1 week, sorry, in 1 year. No, it's not possible to show that. It takes a lot of time. So I think that social enterprises are doing well. I'm not saying that everything it's beautiful. There's a lot of problems too, and maybe Jey knows more. And I think that another thing, sorry, Andrés, to just a little bit of more time. Something that you said before, and it's very interesting, that the CDGs also is a criticism to it, is that they are a framework for, I think it was thought with a Western perspective and didn't consider other continents, other regions, that they have their own specificities. Like when I was living in South Africa, the problems were totally different, the problems we have in France. So, I don't think it's totally different. And I think the framework fits the realities of other countries and other regions. And so I think that this can be like a baseline, but I think countries then, or the UN representatives for each regions or each country, they need to reframe this. And they need to kind of what we can do more on the local level, and also involving others, and maybe try to build these next CDGs for after 2030 with a more realistic perspective, but a more bottom-up perspective too, and with the local specificities, and not okay, we have this framework for the whole world. Well, sorry, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
true. Oh, thank you, Dad. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Jay, from the practitioner's perspective, what do you think? Because also you work with other companies, right?
Yeah.
What are the barriers you face on the ground? And whether are the SDGs realistic for communities and businesses, especially in the global south?
I mean, when you open this, your first thing was the big challenge, funding. I mean, that's the biggest one. You can't escape anything without funding, So you can't start anything. You can have big dreams. You might want to do a podcast, but you don't have funding. You can't edit. You can't market it. You can't do anything, right? So you need funding for anything. So I think that creating our own wealth or creating our own our own money. I was just writing it down. Like maybe we need to come up with our own money and beat Bitcoin or something, or use some sort of mechanism. So the big one I've seen is like the whole carbon tax, right? So I think that's one way to try to go into. I mean, today I was reading a little bit about it. I think only a few countries they're piloting it with the World Bank and trying to see how to do it. But I think that's still in very initial stages. I think they can put it a bit more faster. People should be getting, some sort of kickback. And this is where then the money can actually come in, right? So, being smart, I think we are all smart. Even we have friends who are smarter than us, maybe even, and think about this, like this funding problem, right? So this kickback is not just like, oh, poor NGO, social enterprise, let's give them some money. No, we're going to do like some kick-ass work, It's not going to be like, oh, let's just launch this app for no reason or do this project. It's going to be really something like big. And this whole corporate world of working also needs to have that understanding, like it's a partnership, not just your agenda. Usually it's our agenda. It's just like, no, just do it fast for me, and then everything is good. It's like, no, there's standards. You can't just suddenly, just because it doesn't look nice, you just suddenly change everything. It's about working together and respecting these kind of scenarios in a way. Because I work with some corporates, some bigger organizations. Sometimes they work in like very strict hierarchy kind of mannerism, oh, boss is coming, hello sir. We are more like, hey bro, what's up, let's go do this. So when I talk to them also, I treat them that way because I don't think they are above anything. They're all human. So I treat them like, yo bro, how are you? Let's do this together. Like build that confidence still, professionalism of course. But then they themselves like, wow, why you talk to my boss like so casual? I'm like, yes, this is, we're all humans. He knows what I'm trying to do, and we can, break that whole mindset of how we've been doing things, So that's what sometimes we try to do also. It's that changing how they also think about this kind of like work that they're doing. Of course, it's always you get the same things, like, no, this time I got no budget. Don't worry, next time I'll come back to you. Then we'll do it bigger. They'll never come back. But you just have to just do it because it's like, okay, let's show them what we can do. I will outclass whatever things they wanted and show them like so amazing things that at the end of the day, they'll be like, feel bad in the way that they'll be like, oh my gosh, wow, we could do more if we want to over there. So, it's how we need to like think about these kind of things. It's the smart way, I would think. The other things would be, in this kind of like challenge and scenarios is a few things. One is like looking at the three big polluters, right? Whether it's country or whether it's industry. So I think the big ones are manufacturing, transport, agriculture. Maybe there's a few here and there. Each country may be different, right? So I think it's about hacking these kind of situations, looking at those areas, because those are the biggest ones, right? So what can be done better? I feel there, of course, yes, buying electric cars could help. They even sell like microfiber or microplastic is good for you to buy. But then when you wash it, it goes into the ocean. It doesn't get filtered out. So there's some good solutions that get greenwashing or doesn't really work, needs to now be either tested or reworked and remodeled again. But it's okay, trial and error. This whole plastic crisis, all these issues started at least about 100 years ago. Right after World War I, World War II, that's when industrial and all these things started changing. I have a funny way of looking at it, like because science was not science, it was maybe called magic even last time, or alchemy. And then all this kind of changes in in our phases in life happen, and now we need to like do this reality check, like, oh wait, what are we doing? What's happening here? Who's doing what there and stuff? So it's not about name calling or even calling out someone, you're not doing it right, you don't know what you're doing. No, it's like, yes, again, cry one day or like argue about it, hack it out, have that one day, we vented, okay, now solution again, right? So I think like looking at these kind of areas, and I like what Sandra said, yes, SDGs are made by, maybe they did include different continents to actually look at it. That's why I feel like, yeah, it's not about penalizing, but it's about working together. Because a lot of like the other countries, I think like they don't produce this much of carbon or pollute this much, and then there's others who does it more. So that sort of intervention might help. That's why I think, what comes out in the next few years, if there is ways that we can actually contribute better or like support these kind of organizations. Like right now in Malaysia, for NGOs and social enterprise, we get accredited, we get tax exemption. So far, that's the only thing. We need another 5 or 10 more benefits, right? It's just that only at the moment, but at least one step towards, because I know some countries there's no such thing for social enterprises. So we are pushing this. We are talking with the governments in different places, like how this is where the sharing needs to happen, like what's happening in your country, that's great. Tell us, let's scream about it here also, and then adapt it or change it to what could be used in this context, So looking in those kind of situations, I think that there are very good areas that we can then like change things fast. And when I mean change, don't need change the whole society yet. Do it pilot, show the result, go scale by scale, and then you can change all those things. That's why I feel like, yeah, we being in education field, we know how the school system needs a big kick in the butt, right? Because it's just like, oh man, like the syllabus can be kicked out and like we can do so much more interesting things, Like I'm seeing like some of my friends with kids, they're sending their kids to vocational school. They said like, why send to normal school? Last time people look at vocational school as in like school for those naughty kids because they only know how to work with their hands. Let them be mechanics and play with things. So that's how the mindset. So parents also think in that way, right? So now it's about like, hey, it's not. It's if robots are gonna or AI is gonna answer all your questions and do your work, you need to use your hands or work with other things. So that whole concept of like education is still my big one that I'm like focusing on for sure. Whether it's for the youth or whether it's for the adults who are leading the country or their companies and different areas where they are the leaders and change makers there, right? So I think intervention with them, we should have conferences, let them come. So I see a lot of this happening in a lot of places. But again, they invite the sustainability person. That person already knows this in and out. Now it's not them we need. We need the board of directors. We need these guys to join these things together so that they know what's happening. So that's those kind of like steps that can be taken or like we can look or try and see what can be done.
Yeah, thanks, guys. In order to like close this segment, do you guys think the criticism that the SDGs are over ambitious and too idealistic holds weight, or is it a matter of better execution?
Okay, let me then go first since I think maybe for me, I think it's good that it's there. Then it's about now like reworking, reviewing a lot of those kind of things needs to happen. So I'm happy it's there because otherwise, we'll be saying sustainability. They'll be like, what is it? Who cares? Why? So, because of this, that start of it, at least there's some movements happening. There was the fashion revolution that happened. I think agriculture also took a hit a couple of years ago. India was a lot of other farmers in different countries also were like protesting and trying to change things. There's also like people trying to better their lives, right? So I feel like my main thing from this would be, all of us want to have the best jobs, right? We want to be paid fairly, because all of us should be affording houses, jobs, and traveling. I should come to your country, you should come to my country in a sustainable way. Maybe virtually is okay, but we should be doing these kind of things. So work is so important, like, and that's why I even talk to like some people who are working in farming, and they're like, how can I make farming cool? And there's so many ways to do it. And like a lot of farmers will tell their kids, don't get in my industry, get out and study and stuff. Then who's going to be the farmers next time? So these kind of education and all these things, I think so. So for me, quality of work so important. A lot of dead-end jobs or people who are not even producing the quality that they could because they're doing things that doesn't even matter most of the time. So I think that's why education always comes there. But I think then the next is like, of course, where do you put yourself? If you're in that position to make this kind of changes, like a lot of people maybe buy things, door gifts or trophies and stuff. How are you thinking sustainably? Like, where are you supporting? What are you doing differently? And you need to vouch for these things, and don't be afraid to push that envelope and like say like, hey, no, but this has proof, or let's bring in an expert and see what can be done. Of course, maybe there might be some cost, there might be some learning curves, and you might fail. Maybe this person doesn't know how to do it, but it's okay. It's the fun in it. Where is it fun when you can just go online, just order something and it just comes to you? It's just like no interaction, no nothing. There is value when someone comes and say, hey, I made this shirt for you. Then you're like, wow. So this is one made by one of my participants. She does batik print, and she delivered this to me. So I was like, oh, okay, let's wear it for today's show. So so celebrating these small things, I think, is so important. So I feel like we spend a lot of our times in work, right? So and people want to do good work, like you see nowadays kids, they're just posting videos online of themselves dancing because they're excited. They want to generate some sort of hype and something that they are proud of. And I feel like the SDGs definitely has got so many amazing areas that they can actually like venture with. It's about finding your passion, asking these kind of tough questions, like, what do I want to stand for? What do I want to represent? My journey started with me mainly in IT. So I was doing a lot of recycling, computers, teaching, writing a book to teach IT and stuff. But it was that whole like, hey, I went to that whole like, I don't want to work in corporate. I want to give back, So I was one of those like, hey, I need to change things in a different way. And it's only faster if you get into the rut of things. And then it's about quality of your organization, making sure you get paid well, paying your staff, growing your team, not just thinking like, because a lot of these kind of like companies or people who are doing like this kind of impact work, they're very small. So unless they're big like WWF or Greenpeace and stuff like that, but then they get bogged down by a lot of policy, but they try to do their stuff. So I'm trying to see like how these other small guys here can grow their impact, grow their team. They want to do bigger stuff. How can they even work with corporations to leverage this, maybe getting their volunteers to come and help them out and do other things rather than just 9 to 5. So I'm excited to see definitely what kind of changes can happen, and working with these kind of companies or government agencies and saying like, hey, let's redefine this. Let's do this kick-ass project. Well, let's try this something out of this world and like really shake things up and show what can be done. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's about execution, right? How about you, Sandra? What do you reckon?
I think that it's a good question, by the way. But I think even if there are several criticisms and several changes to be implemented, I think that is a good framework. I think it was important to define. I think it created a kind of a movement too. Because at least at my university and from my experience in the past 10 years here at university, we used several times the CDGs to teach, to base our programs, like the development of new programs on sustainability as well. I have a specific master in sustainability, for example. And these CDGs were part of it. The framework created was important to give us as the basis and also to justify. When we wanted to create something, we want to put something in place, now we can say, okay, CDGs, they are defined by the UN, okay, members, but this is something that can give us reason to be, okay, to exist. That's why I think that they're very important. We cannot just criticize the CDGs and the targets. We can say that's good that they did it. It's good that they gave us a basis for our work today. There, as everything in life, as you said, it's a learning curve. We will need to learn with the mistakes we did, and I mean at the top level as well. They need to understand what were the failures. They need to improve. I think it's the process. Life is dynamic, and so the CDGs should be dynamic too. We should not see them as a static and okay, now we reach or not reach. I think even the question, okay, we think we had to answer yes or no in terms of if they have been achieved or not. If we have to answer yes or no, we say no. We say the timeline is short, but there's so many things that were done that is important to say this work was done, and was done because these goals were defined at the first place. And also maybe because it's also together with this change in society, this pressure from, that means when I mean society, I mean in general, we know we are more aware of these issues, even if there are certain politicians that they try to blind us, say, no, nothing happening, there's no poverty, there's no climate change, there's no this, but this still are, we see it. And so people want, not everyone, as we should be like all moving in one direction or in the good direction, let's say, but we are aware and we try to do it on our own level, at individual level. Corporations, small, medium companies are trying to do, corporations on their own style, even if it's just to put there in the report. And let's say if their activities for sustainability, if there is one that it's really well done, it's already a step towards these goals. Am I right? It's like we cannot just complain and say, okay, you should do better. Okay, we are also grateful that you do something, at least. It should be better, more, yes, without any doubt. But let's accept these small steps too. I think that at least as I say that the French are very, they complain a lot. I don't know if you know this about them, but they complain. And sometimes I get very bored of like, oh, let's hear their complaints again. So yes, we have to complain because complaining also helps to innovate. As you say, Jey, innovation is very important. And we need to be aware of the issues to innovate, to disrupt if needed. So I think that we can complain about the goals, we can criticize, we can give solutions, but then also we have to say, good, thank you that they exist.
Yeah, and that's amazing, guys, because I reckon, look, what we conclude out of this segment and this little conversation in regards to this like idea of criticism and challenges and so on, is the fact that, I just heard Denzel Washington say, the actor, dream without purpose is just dream, right? So having a purpose make we as an idealist a better world, right? Because this actually leads to the next segment, which is about conspiracies. Like there is, as you put it, Sandra, a lot of like theories around the SDGs, right? About this kind of like globalist who wants to lead the world from the top to the down, and then they just want to manipulate people, and then there is like this kind of ideologies battling between the globalists and the nationalists and so on. So I wanted to talk about this, and I think now is the time in our conversation to maybe dive into it, right? In recent years, there have been a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding the SDGs, claim that the Agenda 2030 is a sort of cover for global control or government overreach. So these claims have gained traction among certain political groups, particularly on the far right, right? For example, some argue that the SDGs represent an attempt to enforce global governance, restrict private property, and infringe on individual freedoms, right? So let's do, which I actually learned from Jey in your podcast, this rapid fire question, okay? So I will present for you guys some headlines and claims about the SDGs, and I want each of you to tell me if it's biased, legit, or fake, right? And after we can explore why do you think it's either biased, legit, or fake? Okay, you ready?
Ready?
Cool.
Okay.
Rapid fire questions. First one. The SDGs, this is a headline. The SDGs are a cover for global elites to control local government.
Fake.
It's fake.
Second one. Agenda 2030 aims to take away private property through environmental regulations.
Bias.
So it's not true. It's bias. It's,
All
I
fake.
don't know. It's, well,
Okay. Third headline. The SDGs will enforce global taxes on nations.
Legit.
legit, yeah. It can, well, after 2030 maybe. But for now, no, it's, yeah, but it can be a possibility to enforce like a carbon tax or so. I think it can be legit, yeah.
Okay, okay. So for you both guys, in your view, how do these conspiracy theories impact the perception and, of course, implementation of the SDGs?
Well, I think
Yeah,
it's the, you go,
Yeah, go.
Jason.
Please.
No, I was just saying, as a with the again being here in Europe, in the now that some extreme right parties to enter power and so on to start to govern some countries, or even in Portugal, we saw the rise of the extreme right. Sometimes I don't understand why. I never understand, but in my country, I don't understand at all. But mainly the problems they say that it exists. But okay, maybe it's because I'm not there. I don't see things as they see me. I don't know. But as I say, it's misinformation. I think it's just to control others' minds. Is a way of not accepting what is the reality. I think it's. I used to say that is white men from Western countries that they want to. They are afraid of losing their power. I know I'm white, but I'm a woman. So I identify as a woman, but I think that this misinformation is led by white men in Western countries trying to not lose their power.
Yeah, maybe just to add in, I guess, in a sense of like, a lot of it is like these kind of big corporations, from what you read, is like they pay the scientists to tell that this is fake. They'll just tweak the words. They know how to write policy and law because they got millions, billions of it. So, they will just say like, oh, based on this report, this is fake. And then they'll say like, oh, global warming is not real. So it's like just playing to the duality, like you have this side that is all about, the right wing is always going to be always like in that kind of mindset. And the left wing is always looked as, nature loving, creative. So they always will play that accordingly, when they need to. So the politicians, they use it when they need to. And then the corporates, they end up, if they don't want to do it, they end up, yes, they do pay for these kind of reports. We've seen a lot of this come out and, they can actually change how the language is being said because it's about writing a journal or getting published. And then, it doesn't get validated. So the validation part, it is effort because these people are pumping so much of money and so much of things and it just gets published and they own all this kind of media. So those kind of areas, yes, you can see, I think during probably Trump's time, he went and said, no SDG, global warming is fake. And then you have, everybody else is like, whoa, okay, what do we do now? But the companies in America, they were like, no, but some of them were like, no, but we believe in this. And then some were like, yay, free reign this time. We can do whatever, at that time. So you can see how these kind of things can change or take place or be used in not the right way. So for me, the science don't lie. The science is what has been like backing up a lot of these claims. So that's why I'm quite happy to see people, real good scientists coming up with these kind of reports and stuff, and trying to like see what are again the solutions or what can we do. So I'm still, I mean, there is these things and people will use this kind of conspiracy stuff. I think it's always important for us to fact check. If you see something happening nowadays, you don't know whether it's real. This conversation could be all AI generated. Maybe, we're not real actually here. Not kidding, we're here. But, people can do all these kind of stuff already. So make sure to fact check, make sure to try to understand, especially from the practitioner side, the people who are, so then you can understand it better.
Yeah, I think, like having sorry, Sandra, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying that I mentioned nothing that I want to mention that with the political instability that we are seeing maybe here in Europe with the war in Ukraine and with these tensions between US, Russia, and etc., then there is a lot of governments also using this misinformation to kind of turmoil the other countries to say, okay, now I'm sending this information to your medias, to your social networks. Now deal with it. You will see that we'll have some, some strikes, or you have some people revolting on the streets, and this also the misinformation that they see. It can be linked also to the CDGs, because the CDGs, in a way, it's a kind of a mindset, I think.
Sure.
And that's why the right wing doesn't accept that well this mindset, alleviate poverty. We know that maybe it's not their main goal, and that gender equality is not their main goal, and etc., etc. So I think it's in terms of the values of this, the values that are behind this, that doesn't match.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, to be fair, guys, they see that, the way that I see it is like this. Okay, we live in an information society nowadays, right? Everybody has access to information, no matter what kind of information. But everybody, or most of the connected world, because also we need to talk about the digital divide. Not everybody has the same access as everybody else, perhaps in the developing world, has access to it. Okay. So then if you think about it, like the practitioners and us, the scientists, we are too busy creating either science or practicing our businesses. Hence, we don't have time to create information, right? Or create content, because we are just too busy focusing on our professions. Hence, in that spectrum, who is left over? People who have more time to inform what they think or what they perceive in their minds, right? And if you combine this with identity politics, then you clicked on what's going on with it. Because if you think about it, the people who are more vocal in terms of, oh, this is not true, this is bullshit, like there is no such a thing as a global climate crisis, and it doesn't work. They want to destroy the farming and the agriculture and so on and so forth. And then the politicians, especially, they kind of embrace this into their ideologies, and then they have their community who identified with their politics. Hence, you have the identity politics, so eventually it's actually like an arena of going forth of people who have no idea, right? I mean, people who haven't practiced, who haven't really seen the harm, in the environment, in society, and so on, because they have too much time to create things that they see in their minds. So it's actually very interesting because, I'm conducting a little researching in the north of Spain. And honestly, like, I can see, like, in terms of economics, that there's some interest. Okay. So the way I see, in a more factual way, if you wish, is like, okay, we have now this kind of global policy. There will be winners and there will be losers, right? As it happened before with the global world, with the open economy and so forth. And I see perhaps, there are certain sectors, especially in mining and energy and, in massive agriculture who are losing with this kind of new introduction, right? Like, let's say in the north of Spain, which are wine. And I get it, right? Like they sell wine, and of course the business depending on how much bottles they sell per year, right? But by the introduction of the SDGs, and one of the actual objective is it relates to well-being, eating healthy, and so on. So people consume less drinks. They actually drink less than before. So it made an impact, a negative impact onto these sectors. So of course they're not gonna be in favor of the SDGs because they depending on this. But even though it's important to talk about the both sides, right? Either positive or negative, which is true, but not from the ideological perspective, I would say. So as you both put it on the table, I mean, there are things that are happening, there are things that are needed, and we need to try to help the planet from our own corner with with practice and with science, and as Jay's put it, like revising. Okay, nothing is perfect. Any model is perfect. Sandra also mentioned before, like everybody has a different template, so we cannot really like simplify such matter. So yes, I agree with you guys, and maybe this kind of like informational arena or dimension, like constrained the perception and implementation of something which is very important, that is the planet, right?
So just to pick on something. So sometimes we preach in our same circles, right? So when we talk to each other, we all are like, yeah, high five, yeah, change the world. But when you step out outside, that's where the problem lies, or the challenges, to make people understand that side of things. So I think this is where, having both parties in the table. So sometimes I see some of the debates, most times they'll be outnumbered. One person will be outnumbered by another person. And usually the side that's going to be just talking nonsense and screaming at the top of their voice is the one that doesn't make sense. And the other side is just being rational, trying to like say, hey, no, this is science. But they just somehow rather get outshined. And you just hear this big, like, oh no, we got to make money. And then you're like, but this guy is also talking, I want to hear more of this, but because this person is more vocal and stuff. So I feel like sometimes it's not fair. It depends on the channels that you watch, because, different media have different takes of it. So like you said, from the first part is, yes, it is a war of our attention, what we watch, what we see, what we believe, and even what we buy, like I was saying in the start just now. So all these things are ways like, yeah, you need to also look at the other side. So sometimes we cannot be like, okay, because we believe it's sustainability and all this, it's not good. So we need to see what the other people are also talking.
Yeah.
If the time of day also is important. Likewise, they should give a time of day to like listen to the science and understand, and then say, why did he debunk it? Not because one guy is just screaming, just being excited, and then you're like, this doesn't make sense. Like, come on, tell me facts. Don't treat me like a child. Don't just say he's stupid, that person is just stupid. It's like, no, stupid, all this doesn't make. Give me facts. I want to know why. Put a table, tell ChatGPT which is better or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, sure. I mean, generally, like, Sandra, like, for instance, Mereka and we, when we're dealing with clients, okay, and we try to encourage them to integrate this kind of like social impact, strategic policies within their companies, you have to play the game, right? But it's true, like, there is plenty of literature, and that, Sandra, that proves that having your staff happy and having or providing a better ecosystem to your staff, and providing opportunities, they are genuinely more proficient, they are more efficient, and their performance is better, right? I mean, the customer care would be better, they would work more happily and would be easier. So I don't think it didn't exist before, right? I mean, if you put this kind of ideological flag, the businessmen or, the business owners, no men, but owners, they wouldn't really see it, right? I mean, it's like, it's good. It's good to treat. Is it bad to treat your staff well? Okay, if you don't want to see it from an emotional perspective, you're gonna see the return because they're gonna sell better, they're gonna have a better customer care, they're gonna be more productive, and so on and so forth, right? What do you guys think?
Well,
Yeah,
I think that, that was a trend here at university a couple of years ago, like 2-3 years ago. Students, for their master thesis, they wanted to focus on the well-being of employees. So they wanted to research about it. It was a kind of a trend. Nowadays, a little bit less, but like maybe more than 3 years, like 4 years, there was most of the students, let's say around, we have like 200 students at the master level. Let's say that like 25% of the students are focusing their thesis, or even more, on their well-being of employees, or how to create, an environment that will create this well-being for employees. And as you said, it is both on the sense of you call it the emotional part, but it's the create, like to give more time for them to go to the gym, but also, to put processes in places that will make them more efficient, and in which they will be then happier with their work. So companies, yes, they have to put, I think that they have to put this in place, also because the new generation, the Gen Z, they want this. And I read an article the other day that the companies are firing the Gen Z because they want these aspects. They are more relaxed. They feel very entitled, and so they see the world in a different way than we do. So it's something that now companies or put it in place, or because they can fire the Gen Z, even in a few, they only have Gen Z or even younger generations, so they will need to adapt. So well-being and looking at the conditions they provide for the people, it's good. And sometimes students ask me, when I teach social enterprises, they ask me if they create a company that has their employees, they care for the interests and for the needs of their employees. Is this a social enterprise? And they put me there, and I was like, oh, what I answered, because in one way I want to say, yes, if you are, as you said, Jey, before, growing your team, if you are caring not in an emotional way, as you say, and this is like caring in the sense that we put these practices in place that respect your employees, that consider their time, that consider also this equilibrium between family and work, and etc., etc. And I at the end, I want to say, yes, you can consider this a social enterprise if this is really their core values. They are built, they were created to respond to this. But of course, if we see at the terms of literature, it's not that. It's not that. If you look there and the articles and say, okay, no, this is not a social enterprise. That is not. A social goal is not my goal as an individual.
Yeah.
But sometimes I want to answer them, yes, you can consider it. But it's just to yes, I agree with what you said on the well-being of these employees. I think it was that the question. Am I right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I'm just opening a debate, right?
Yes.
I see also a big spike. Like I think a few years ago, everybody's, even till today, sometimes when we do programs, somebody wants to do a mental health project, always they want to do something with well-being, because that generation does, because they are afraid also, for themselves, like what's going to happen, am I going to be guided? Now it's everybody's like work from home, or, flexible working hours. And so it's good to have all these things, but I guess now I've seen some solutions which uses tech to actually remunerate. So it's a gamified. So your bosses have to like give you a feedback every week. If you're working from home all the time, like you said, are you actually going to go to the gym, or just sitting at home and just not doing anything else? Are you socializing or that? Because otherwise you just end up working from home, not even having friends at work. And that's important, because working in clusters or with people, it really brings up that fun side. Otherwise, you just like meeting after meeting is just like, hi, everybody, hi. Oh, nice shirt. Ha ha ha. And that's it. It's like 2 minutes of small talk. Maybe some even don't go into that. They just straight away like, okay, let's do work, So, that kind of like cycle of like human contact and human behavior because of technology and all that. We don't have that time when we get to have this kind of interactions, So I think that's also some of the reasons why these kind of things are spiking also for people to like talk about this more. And this is, as you said, it can't be solved today. You need to see your complete culture. It takes time. Sometimes you got to invest in a lot more things to make sure there are all these kind of benefits. I've seen one social enterprise or another entrepreneur, his business, what they do is they have unlimited days of leave. And he realized like nobody takes leave because people were like, unlimited, but okay, maybe I don't use it. So people
That's cool, man.
Even more because but only thing they say is like don't leave any dead bodies behind, not meaning like make sure you get your job done, which makes sense, So I think like having these sorts of like rewards is important, definitely, so that people are happy in what they do and stuff. And this is where I think like corporates play a bigger part, or government, where they can give back kind of a sense of, because we don't do volunteering so much anymore. Maybe we do help our friends and stuff, but that culture of like how we are, because different countries do it differently. I know in America, everybody gives out some money to NGOs in donation. It's a big culture thing that they do, which I never knew. I was like, wow, okay, I didn't know US, you get a lot of funding from individuals. Everybody takes their money. So different areas, there's different things that could be useful, could be helpful for us to learn or latch on and also understand what can be done in a fun way.
You know what? Actually, like, I want to talk about Mereka in that sense, man, because in the podcast that I did with Rush, I'm always like, Sandra, I don't know, I never told you, but I really like that Mereka and Biji-Biji, they have such a transparent finance scheme. Basically, everybody that works at Mereka knows how much everybody's doing, right? And they know exactly what they have to do if they want to scale up and make more money, right? So that's fantastic. Transparency, right? So people exactly know what they have or what they earn. And, I think you guys, I don't know if you measure that, but I'm pretty sure like it might create such a peaceful environment because, it's like, that's fantastic. And another thing I want to touch upon is like the consumer perspective. Starbucks does, Nike does, Coca-Cola does. Now they are kind of like knocking on this like market, right? So come on, we cannot be hypocritical. Even big corporations, they realize that doing good is better. Like look at Coca-Cola, they bought Pret a Manger in the UK, right? Like they have Coca-Cola Zero, right? So what? Okay, so is it good? I think it's better don't you think it's better to make better products, like better for the consumer? Like even conscious consumers, they don't mind to even pay this extra surplus knowing that is good. I remember when I bought from you guys, from Biji-Biji, it was a pencil case, right? I mean, of course, if I compare these with Primark or H&M or, Hallmark, of course it's going to be more expensive, but because it has value in it. So it's very interesting,
So I'll just share, so we do this thing called open book financing because we realized like at that time our government or even some businesses, if you ask them, what's your financials? Some will take 5 years to tell it to Parliament, and they have so many red tapes and all these things. So in the social enterprise world, it's like there's no rocket science. So we've thought like, hey, let's just make sure everybody knows how much we charge our manpower, and 30% is profit because company needs to make money. This is the easiest way to teach any corporates, what is social enterprise? We need money, we need profit for profit, so 30% goes to profit. So they're like, oh, okay, this is how you work. Sometimes more, sometimes less, because some things have overhead, some projects are bigger, and there's a lot of moving parts that are not fine-tuned. So we can always work it in that area. So that's one side of things. So this is where we share. Sometimes we also are doing our own equity crowdfunding at the moment. So that means we're opening up shares to the public to invest in us. So this way, we also have other people to invest. So this is where the money thing comes in, right? Because you can't do it alone. It's only about 2,500 ringgit, which is about less than $1,000. So less than that per share. And then we opening invest in us. And then
can we invest? Can we invest from overseas?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
dude, you have to send me a link. I would love to invest. Dude, I would love to invest in you guys.
So we just started it. So tomorrow, I know Rash, our CEO, group CEO, he's doing a sharing session. I'll share you the links. Maybe you can put it in your caption, because we're going to do it for the next, at least till end of the year or longer a bit, to raise funds. Okay, so this is where people then can learn about, oh, how do I build my business? Okay, what is this growth? So we share everything. So every quarter or every 6 months, we do a sharing with all our investors. And our investors also will tell us, like, hey, why are you sharing too much? You don't need to share everything that's not going well, but it's good. It's good you're sharing. But they're like, no, I'd rather just tell you what we really intend to do, what changed, what's not going well, then sugarcoat it and say, like, everything's good, yeah, your money's safe. No. The last investment we did, we managed to get 50% returns extra. That means if you invested whatever, you get 50% investment return. So that's great. Now, the second one, we are increasing the cap a little bit more and hoping to get more. So we evaluated the company a bit more higher. And so this is one way to think about it. Then there's this other thing. So I know Rash has been talking a lot about this. It's like, when you look at all the shared services and all these things, the bottom line people don't get any benefits. They are the backbone of everything, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in Grab services, all this share ride services, they're not bothered so much. So we are looking at our platform where we are building something like for Upwork or Fiverr for people to get jobs. But the people who pay are actually the experts. And then once they pay, they get to see the things that is happening. And then what we are trying to do is to give these guys even some part of value, that they are not just workers and stuff. It's called distributed economy. So that means you actually share. Whenever you make profits in this platform, we even give them something, some benefits. Because a lot of times, like these drivers and stuff, they probably don't get so much medical coverage, care and stuff, nothing. They just get a jacket, shirt, go ride your car and make us money, So disrupting all these kind of like systems is important. And then, it's about also making money. So these are like some areas or things that, people can think about. And if they are interested to learn about all this kind of thing, how can they support? I think equity crowdfunding is quite a cool one because you can invest in other social enterprises. So maybe you're not interested in education. There are people who are doing coffee, sustainable coffee, and you can go invest in them maybe even. So, find something you're interested in. So this is another way you can also try to give back in a larger way.
Cool. Guys, now we're going to go to our last segment, which is looking forward, the future of the SDGs. Okay? So very simple and in short, because I know you guys have things to do. Sandra, looking ahead, what needs to change for the SDGs to be more effective? Should the goals be revised, or is it more about improving the way that they are implemented?
I think that's more the second, because the first one, the goals, if you still look at it, I like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education. I think they are still important and they're still pressing issues to resolve. Something that I said before, that issues are different. It's not really what I meant to say. I mean that issues like poverty, it's here in France, we have poverty. We have poverty in Africa, in another country. So the poverty, the levels of poverty may be different. and how we then solve the issues. Like we solve poverty, then we need different tools, we need different resources, we need different time frames as well to resolve these issues. Because the idea that came to my mind was in terms of waste management. When I was living in South Africa, when I arrived there, was my first experience in an African continent. I arrived there and I saw all this plastic on the street. And I was like, whoa, something is not working here, because here in France or more, let's say in Europe, we see plastic in the street, but not at the same level as you see it's still in South Africa today. And I said something, so of course that the social enterprises there and the community-led projects, they were, for example, focusing on picking up the waste from the streets, a lot of upcycling projects and etc. It doesn't work here in France. So it's here we have organizations that they are funded by the government, and even governmental organizations that they collect and they do the waste management. So I see, and of course that in order to reduce that, South Africa will need more time than we need time here, but we will need more time for other issues. I'm not saying that we are good, we're not at all. There's other issues that I say to my students for the social enterprise course that they have to develop to think of a problem and then to think of a solution for that problem. And I oblige them to think locally, which creates some kind of a problem sometimes because they don't know how to think of the problems they live with every day. They cannot see, for them a social problem may be, oh, we don't have a student's restaurant here at the university. Okay, or it can be, because I don't have another problem that's even not a social problem. I don't have with whom to play tennis. So I try to, it's a problem. Of course it is for them. It is, I'm not saying, not unvalue or minimizing the problems they feel. But of course, if I said to them, look, you can think of a problem in every place of the world, I'm quite sure they say, I'm going to save the world in Africa. I'm going to save the world in Asia. I'm going to Vietnam or to Indonesia. There's real problems, their mindset. So that's why I oblige them to think of problems that still exist today. For me, these goals are still important. We can add others if we think, like nowadays, in terms with the technology. And you mentioned ChatGPT, etc. So, all these aspects of misinformation, as you said, Andrés said that in terms of we are living in the information world, but we don't know how to deal with this information. Maybe we need education, training now how to deal with this information. Maybe we cannot even say that our parents and grandparents, they cannot because they didn't live in this area, let's say, or they are living, but they were not born in this era. But today, people or kids that are born almost with their phone in their hands and their internet, they don't know how to make sense of all this information. So maybe we can add other goals that are important and looking more into the future, not only like, okay, let's define the new deadline for 2040, but let's define more in the long term. And then for me, it's more about the execution, is providing more funding, providing more collaboration between different countries, providing, as you said, sharing practice is very important. Maybe also a solution that is in Malaysia, maybe it's very good here. We can try to adapt it, of course, to the culture of the country, to the specificities. But there still need a lot of work to do. We need also governments to support. I think I wrote it here when in my mind I wanted to say different levels. So starting at the top, of course, government level, then corporations, then small, medium companies, then also the organizations of the social economy, including social enterprises, us at individual level. So we need better execution. We need a lot of support too. I think it's very important. And I think that, that those said that you didn't say if it was legit or not, that news, that headline regarding the taxation. Sometimes we see that it's important to tax in order for certain goals. I don't know, we cannot tax a country because we still have a very high level of poverty. Mainly who will tax, who is the country or the UN representative. They will say, okay, you are having a fine because you have too much high levels of poverty. But who are you to say? It's not only my fault, maybe. So we need to look at it in a more systemic way. So of course, to reduce poverty as we would like, it's not in 1 year or 5 years. So we cannot, at certain goals, we cannot, of course, apply any taxes. But for others, the CO2 emissions, we could, considering again, and that maybe we will not be able to do that very few, and we will have in a few time, we'll have the COP. And so I'm quite sure they will discuss the CO2 emissions. It's always a good discussion they have. But it's like, who also, I will pay for as I mentioned before, only I pay for the CO2 emission that is done in my country. But if I produce all the commodities out of my country, should I pay for the others' CO2 emissions too, or just mine? So all these questions are important. So the taxation could be interesting, but it's a long way before implementing. It needs to be fair. Most of it, we cannot just say and blame the others, you're not doing enough, when we have easier ways to do things. When I mean again, Europe, and that we have at European level, we have collaboration between the different countries. We have, the national level, and then we have a European level, the decisions that are made, and etc. You mentioned something that, just to go back a little bit, I'm so sorry if I'm taking a lot.
No, please. No.
You mentioned about in the north of Spain about the wine, right? That's okay. That we need to consume better, so we need to drink, reduce our consumption of alcohol. And there was in the Parliament, European Parliament, they wanted to put some, as they have with cigarettes. We have the cigarettes, the packages have very scary images here in Europe, and they wanted to put similar images in the bottles of wine, but it didn't pass. And why? Because of the lobbyists that we say, wine industry, it's really representative here in Europe. It's a huge market, and besides, it is a huge the wine producers. So it's a main activity. Let's say that's what I wanted to say. It's a big activity, a main activity for certain countries: Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, and so it didn't pass. And we know that we should reduce the alcohol consumption. We consume a lot, so to become healthier. So all these things, I think it's a lot of small parts, small bits that will make all of it, the big picture. So just to conclude, for me, the CDGs are still important. Maybe add or change one, add another one or 2 or 3, let's see. But the execution, we need more support to all from government, from corporations should also be asked to be more supportive, just not to respond to comply to regulations, but more active. It's said as well about Coca-Cola, Nike, and etc. Of course, they are changing their practices. There is the social aspect. The society is pressuring the new generations. They want it's more articles or more products that are sustainable friendly.
True.
Is that people are changing their behaviors, their consumption behaviors, their attitudes towards also the consumption. So they need to adapt their market. They knew a lot of my question is for this big corporation is if they do this because they want to be part of the change, or they do it because they will lose consumers.
Really hard to tell, right?
Right.
I like you that you close with the question. I love it. Maybe our community can answer in the world that Jey, in terms of what we're talking about, what innovations or new approaches are emerging in the sustainability space that perhaps can accelerate progress towards the SDGs. So, how can practitioners like yourself contribute to the next decade of sustainable development?
Ooh, big one, huh? Big one. Well, I mean, it's a lot got to do with the design aspect of it. I like to say, like, more inclusive in your design approaches, because the solution cannot be one size fits all. It's always got to like think of different people, different situations, different challenges, all these things. So I think being more inclusive is definitely important. I like the fact that, a lot of like terminologies and things now, how we say things have changed. I think if we look back 10 years ago, some of the things that we said and did would be like kind of shocking sometimes for people, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. We actually used to do these kind of things, So those kind of like changes is great to see that's happening. But again, it's not big enough. It's like always token, done it in a sense just for that reason. Okay, we have a female here, yay. Okay, everything now looks great, but it's not about that. Not just having some diversity or having someone disabled there, and it needs to be really, really like well thought of, well planned from the get-go. So of course, this comes with that funding mindset of like, having that, but sometimes you can be innovative, can be really cool things, just having it virtually and making sure everybody is able to access it. Then you're really being accessible in some sense, right? Because a lot of times things don't reach out to rural parts, as we know.
Yeah.
A lot of times all the impact and work and all, you go to the cities, everybody's like, yeah, SDG, yeah, I know that. You go to a rural place, you show them SDG, they're like, what is that? What's color? You want me to color this? Or can I choose a color? You ask, what do you want me to do? Count to 17? What's after 18? So, we haven't done that work also in a way for us to advocate it to different areas of how they can apply it. So I think, of course, there is the work that needs to be done. Then it's about thinking of these things. So I even wrote down, just for the fun of it, like even having the youth to police the adults, even in the SDG side, because they are doing all this bad stuff. It's like, if we go another adult, another blah, 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 we're going to scream at each other. Get the kids to go and like scream at their parents maybe and say like, hey, what are you doing? Like, why is there plastic in my soap that I just bought? Like, what do I really need this plastic, or can it just be something else? Like simple things. Even like, I don't know, in Asia, like every time you buy vegetables in this grocery shop, they give you a plastic where you put the vegetable inside and you weigh it, and you take it back. And it's like, why? Like, you can use newspaper, you can use paper, you can even, they're like, no, somebody might steal or something, like it's still that grinding those kind of like thoughts of people just need to trust the system, or like right now we can do virtual working, people can work virtually. Without the pandemic, I don't think so anybody would have like allowed it. Like from banks to even tech companies, they still were like, no, come to work, come to office. Now after pandemic, that, oh yeah, we can do this. So with this kind of whether it's catastrophes or problems, people will have to reinvent, and it's a matter whether you're able to grow fast. And then it's about advocating to your leaders also, because they are the ones who are going to make those decisions. Very important. Then it's also about the people who are doing the work, right? I think like, I'm not trying to shout for us here, because I guess we are trying to like tell people, live better lives, do all these things. But, the practitioners, they actually like working their butts off. They're like 24/7, trying, doing their things, and they're still kind of struggling, which is not so fair. I still believe like it's even though some people say, oh, but he's just a cleaner, he should be like, no, it's not. We cannot allow that to happen still, just because some people are born to a rich family, then they get all the benefits. It's like, it's not right, so those kind of things we know isn't going to make someone feel empowered or, able to do what they can do best. I think we got to like just change it overnight. It can be done. It's not impossible. And then, remunerating those who are doing already the good things, like making sure they are being awarded, they are being like recognized, and, celebrating those kind of accomplishments, giving them that leverage that they need to go next. What's next for them? What's the next level for them to get into? Otherwise, they get complacent. People will be like, okay, I make this test. That's it. I'm just going to do this. But no, now maybe this person can go and teach others. Maybe this person should learn how to be a better leader and do other things, or lead another department, or think about different areas. So, I'm always about that education is important, and also in this design. So, what innovations can happen. So I'm quite happy and lucky that I get to mentor and hear these ideas and see these things. But I'm always, in that same room. So I'm always trying to like get out of that room and go into another room and like see these bunch of bankers or corporate people and talk to them about sustainability and see what they think. And like, I think we need to infiltrate and like see what they are about, what are they up about, and like see what we can like kind of like, kick into their heads in a good way.
Sure. Okay, guys, that's amazing. We just reached 2 hours. 2
Woo!
hours conversation.
Wow.
How do you feel, Sandra? You were a bit nervous. Come on,
I'm good.
Did she do great, Jey?
Of course.
Oh,
Right?
thank you. It's very nice.
You are the podcaster, man. Come on. That was fantastic.
You're an expert. I believe
He is
you.
an expert. Guys, that was fantastic.
It was good. Thank you.
We've learned a lot, I think. We touched upon many topics. I know this topic is broad, guys. For our community, I mean, of course, we cannot cover everything, What we really wanted is to bring an Asian European perspective, practitioner, and academic perspective, which is fantastic. What can I say? Like, thank you, Sandra and Jey, for sharing your insights. We hope today's discussion inspires our community to think more critically about the SDGs and how, in our way, we can all contribute to a more sustainable future. So don't forget to subscribe. Also look into Sandra Ramos, her LinkedIn, and also Jey Bala LinkedIn, and also Mereka and Biji-Biji. So we see you next time on our series of the Sustainable Talk Show in our Invisible Experts podcast. Stay informed and stay engaged. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Wait, guys,
Thank
let's take a selfie all together. Wait.
Right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Come on. Again. Come on, Sandra, you are too serious.
I'm very serious all the time.
Good.
Thank you, guys. That was amazing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Woo.